From the studios at Holbay Productions, this is Season 4 of the PowerPLAY Show.
Welcome to Season 4, you guys, of the PowerPLAY Show. I'm your co-host, Tonya McGrath. I say co-host because this season we have a new face and voice to the show, my co-host, Kimberly Perez. Hey, Kimberly.
Hi, Tonya. I'm so excited to be part of this award-winning show, PowerPLAY.
Welcome to the team. Let me tell you a little bit about our new co-host. Kim was born in Harlem, New York, and raised in rural Maine and Vermont. That couldn't be two more different worlds, and we'll talk about that a bit. As a kid, Kim would often find answers to her questions in nature. However, in 1972, she tuned into a PBS children's program called Zoom and fell in love with television. Kim graduated from Ithaca College and became an award-winning video producer at WGBH in Boston, where we met when we were really, really young. Kim also sings, writes, and enjoys discussing politics and has never stopped looking for answer. Kim, welcome.
Thank you, Tonya. And I think that about says it all.
You know, as I mentioned, you and I kind of grew up at WGBH. We were two of the younger, Black girls, Black kids on the block. But talk about that experience for you and when you started working at WGBH.
Well, I had wanted to work at WGBH forever. As a matter of fact, before the internet, I was there. No, I was there after the internet, but before the internet, I used to ride my bike down to Western Ave, look through the job listing books.
Yeah.
And write everything down and apply to jobs that way. Remember, we didn't have a camera that I could take pictures of the job listing. So
right.
I would go, I think my schedule was about every other week. I was in the lobby there looking through the job listings book. But when I finally got in, it was a dream come true. I couldn't believe it because it had been my lifelong dream to work at WGBH where Zoom was produced.
Yeah. And how long were you there?
I was there 20 years.
Okay. I was 25. So
yep, I was there 20 years. And it was the best. I loved it. The best times of my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we grew up there. And now we are ready to start Season 4 of the PowerPLAY Show. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Each season of the PowerPLAY Show, we premiere with renowned artist and my dear friend, Rob Stull. In the past, we've delved into conversations about art and culture, music, specifically hip hop, his work in museums around Boston, and even paid homage to his late father, Donald Stull, the pioneering architect of the historic firm Stull Lee. And this year, we kick off in the same tradition of the PowerPLAY Show. However, it's a little bit different. Rob couldn't be with us today, but he will be on later on in this season. So until then, we thought we would look back at some of the topics we've covered over these past 3 years in this special, The Best of Rob Stull. We begin with one of our first loves, hip hop. Here is Rob Stull from Season 1 of the PowerPLAY Show with my then co-host, Sevelyn Singleton. Rob and I went to high school together, and we were from the same kind of generation, and I knew how to break dance. He knew how to break dance. We were into rap music. I did.
When did you break dance?
I didn't break dance in front of the guys, but I did. I was good. You can ask my sister.
Like your girlfriends that collected comic books and
yes,
didn't tell
exactly,
you. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
How much has hip hop played an influence in your art?
Major. We're talking about influences, extensions of popular culture. Hip hop at its core is youth culture that is now global culture. And It's what I constantly tell people. All of the cool stuff is created by kids. And hip hop, when you think about it, it had all of those elements. It has all of those elements that are all storytelling elements, and created by kids. And there's sort of like an innocence in it. And I always say I'm a man of a certain age, so I identify with certain music or certain cultural elements that might not appeal to a younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
They're not
or an older generation.
Exactly. And they're not supposed to. So when I speak about hip hop culture, I get very protective and personal about it, because it's constantly being misinterpreted and misconstrued with the current form of music. And I say I always say that there is a distinct difference between hip hop music and rap music.
Explain that difference for me.
Rap to me is like a genre within music now. It's recognizable, it's identifiable, and it's a genre within music. Hip hop music takes on a whole different form because it's a more cultural representation.
I was going to say that. Yeah, it's a culture. It's the clothing. It's the dance. It's the art. It's the music. It was
attitude.
Yeah. It was such an important part of my life, and for me, it made its way into my writing, because I started off in my career doing writing. I wrote a lot of poetry, that type of thing, and that was all very influenced by the hip hop culture.
Is rap incorporated in the hip hop culture?
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's, I think you were kind of starting to hit on this a little bit. I listen to the music today, and I still listen to rap music. I still listen to anything that is coming out right now. My heart is still with hip hop, and we're talking about 80s, early 80s, mid 80s, early 90s, like that kind of 10, 12 year span, which is where kind of I live. And
I still live there too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what I see is that with hip hop culture, it's just so textured, and what I see and what I hear now, it just seems very flat, and I don't know if that makes a lot of sense.
There's so many different ways that I can, in directions that I can go when talking about this.
Talking about hip hop?
Yes, and how important it is. Not just as an aspect of my life creatively that enhances everything that I do. As you were talking, Tonya, I was thinking that, the pureness of it that we experienced when we were kids is, what I hate to do is sound like the grumpy old man where I'm dissing the new stuff, right, because I'm not doing that.
Right. And the old stuff.
I'm not, depends on how old we're talking. Because I'm not doing that, and I wouldn't want to do that.
That's not your intention.
No, it's not. It's not. And in doing that, I sound like, the people that didn't, that diss jazz, when my uncles and my father would, so that's not my thing. But
has it become the thing of hip hop?
Well, what I fear is the misinterpretation and that the cultural aspects of it that drew us to it as young people aren't necessarily all that important to the younger generation now.
Right.
So when you and that's why I think it's necessary, because in order to preserve something, you have to get that younger generation engaged, and They have to get turned on like you got turned on to develop that desire to want to continue to represent it properly. And I don't think it's all that. I don't think it's even on their radar anymore. It's from the music aspect of it. That's why I compartmentalize. I put it into two different categories between a musical genre and a culture. And we have too many negative, I would say, influencing factors that are drawing the young kids in.
Such as?
Well, fantasy rap, I like to call it, where they're talking about, luxury cars and mansions and champagne and diamonds and all of that stuff that's just, not only is it not tangible, it's not real, because the people that are actually professing it aren't living that lifestyle either. It's just a means of selling records.
You never knew that you were a breakdancer.
I was a breakdancer. Not a lot of people know this about me, but yeah, I was very shy about it, so I'd only do it around my girlfriends, but I never did it in front of the guys. But yeah, I have a few moves still.
Okay, so since I'm not a guy, I'm expecting to see it sometime.
Okay, I can show you one that I still know how to do.
Away. Nice.
You're
Very
welcome,
nice.
audience.
Very nice.
But yeah, I mean, and Rob and I talk about this a lot, just how, the music has changed, the artistry has changed a little bit. And, I wonder, you growing up in rural Maine and Vermont, how much you were exposed to hip hop music?
I was not exposed to it at all. So to be honest, I've been listening to hip hop a lot more because I have 14 and 15-year-old children. So I get to listen to what they listen to. But, I have been trying so hard to have a better understanding of it. And that's so what I try to do is I ask my son what he's listening to. Mm-hmm. And he tells me, what artists he's listening to and why he chose them. And he explains to me what the songs mean. And I really like that about him, because when he finds music that he likes it for its meaning.
I don't necessarily listen to what's going on today, with an exception of a couple. I love Kendrick Lamar. And, maybe I can name one or two, but that's pretty much it for me.
See, I'm familiar with Kendrick Lamar.
There you go. There you go.
So one of the things that I was trying to understand a bit better was when you're listening to hip hop music, when you're listening to rap, do you call it hip hop music? That's what I wasn't clear about. And I usually say hip hop when I'm listening to that music, or ask somebody, do you want to listen to some hip hop? I usually don't say rap because I don't hear people say that anymore. So is rap an outdated term?
That's a great question. And I am not an expert on this, but what I will say to you is that hip hop is it's a feeling. It's more than just the music. It's just a vibe that you get from the music, where rap can be anything. It can include rock and roll. It can include jazz. It can include, anything. But for me, true hip hop is that sweet spot between 1982 and 1994. That's it for me. So I would say that nowadays it's rap. It's not hip hop.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But, my audience will disagree with me, and you guys should write in and tell us how you feel. So,
yeah.
What's coming up next?
When season 2 of the PowerPLAY Show premiered, we were in the midst of a deadly pandemic, which we're still living with. But that didn't stop one of the more important projects, and historic for that nature, to ever hit the Museum of Fine Arts. Basquiat and the hip-hop generation. Rob Stull was not only part of this powerful exhibit, his work donned the facade of the Museum of Fine Arts, the first local artist to ever do so in the museum's 150-year history.
What an honor. I think I need to backtrack a little bit to talk about the inspiration of the images that are actually that were made into 25 feet tall banners.
Wow.
So there is this groundbreaking, monumental exhibit at the MFA right now until May of this year, 2021. And it's Basquiat and the hip hop generation. It's called Writing the Future. Hip hop generation. I did what was called an answer to the exhibit. Mind you, as being products of hip hop culture that we are, and proudly acknowledge whenever we get it.
Absolutely.
I was well aware of all of the artists that are represented in this exhibition. So this wasn't even something that was officially decided upon when me and Pro Black had that first meeting with Makiba, but it was something that was in the pipeline for sure. And it also coincided with the 150th anniversary of the MFA. So there was a whole bunch of programming around the anniversary, a lot of programs that got yanked and canceled due to COVID. And for a minute, we didn't know if we were going to survive either, if the mural project was going to survive, because there was an element of the mural project where Pro Black was going to be working with Madison Park High kids and Artists for Humanity kids. All of that obviously was scrapped because of the social distancing that we wouldn't have been able to do. So the Basquiat exhibit survived, and the artists that were represented in the show represent an era of the graffiti and visual art aspect of hip hop in New York, like the post 80s era, which is like the best era. So that was when everything was happening. That was when Keith Haring had already blown up. That was when Basquiat had already blown up. And these guys are all contemporaries. So you had Futura, Lady Pink, Toxic, A1, Ram LZ, Fab Five Freddy, Lee Quinones. What a roster. What a roster.
Absolutely.
To draw inspiration from. So my initial, when given the opportunity to do an answer, my initial attitude was, I want to do something in sort of tribute form, visually, to show what they meant to me, almost like to honor them. But I wanted to do it in my way, and I wanted to play around with sort of elements of like how could I jam pack and cram as much information about these artists in single individual pieces without it looking like a big mess, and have it be informative. And then when I finally presented it to Makiba, she loved the idea. And what I did that I found worked was making it personal, and then taking little elements of each artist's sort of story, if you will, and throwing it in there in a collage almost kind of way, but it wasn't traditional collage. I was drawing everything. So I might take the symbol of the New York Transit Authority and throw that in there. That's an instantly identifiable symbol, I believe, recognizable the world over. Or I might take a logo from an old ink company named Flowmaster that all graffiti artists used to, when we used to make our own homemade markers. So little things like that true heads would recognize, but then it's a nod to whoever I'm paying a tribute or an homage to, because they're going to know what it is also. So that's how I did it. That was my approach. So I did, originally I wanted to do tribute homages to all of the artists represented in the show, but time didn't allow for that. So I narrowed it down, and ultimately there were 5, and I included pro-black, and I'll get to why I felt it was important and necessary to include him as well. But the 5 were Ramel Z, Lady Pink, Lee Quinones, Basquiat, obviously. I thought pro-black was significant and important to add because of just what he represents, especially here on a local front, and his contributions to hip hop. You know, Boston has a major chapter in the culture, and you know, him being sort of representative of that generation right after ours. And now he has all of these disciples that follow him and really look up to him. It's almost like God status. So, and hip hop is so global now, you can almost break it down into regional areas, and there are those individuals from across the country who've made major contributions. So I was saying there's no way you can have an exhibition like this for what it represents in Boston at the MFA and him being a part of the work that we were both doing as artists in residence at the MFA. There's just no way he can't be included.
It's groundbreaking because when you think of hip hop, people don't think Boston, right? But to have this kind of exhibit featuring the amazing talent of you, pro-black, and how it's so important that this kind of history be seen and understood here in the Boston area, where we're not typically known for that. You know, we're known for the Celtics and for Tom Brady and, you know, for some other kind of things. But why do you think it's so important that this hip hop generation, even though, like, I'm a skeptic because I'm saying that it's slowly dying because of the crazy music and the things that we're seeing right now, which is not true hip hop. But why was it so important that this be exhibited now, do you think?
I think for all those reasons you just mentioned. I mean, we're individuals of a certain age. So the stuff that's on the radio and being produced now isn't going to appeal to us, and nor should it. So I think it makes it that much more vital and important to have efforts like this to bring people back and remind them where all of this came from, especially when the message is being so horrendously misconstrued.
Yes.
And if those kinds of efforts aren't celebrated, this Basquiat exhibition is one example, but if those kinds of efforts aren't being celebrated, then you lose control of your own culture. And then you leave it up to somebody else to define what it is. And it's like, it's a sad state of affairs if the optics suggest that people really don't care if that happens. You know, so it's almost like individuals like myself, like you, like people that really love this and cherish it. It's a responsibility almost. Yeah. To grab those opportunities as they present themselves to us, and really reinforce the notion of, yeah, you know how this started? This was youth culture. This is something that was created by teenagers, you know, by 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, you know, and it grew to be this global juggernaut that is infused into every aspect of everyday life. Absolutely. And it's seamless now. We're being fed hip hop culture, you know, through television commercials and automobile advertisements and things like that. But I didn't want to not answer your question about the banners, because I kind
yes.
of
Yeah.
yeah. But so that the exhibit and the work that I did in tribute and homage form for those artists, that was the inspiration for 3 of the banners that are currently on the MFA's facade, the entrance on Huntington Avenue. And those 3 are Basquiat, obviously, Lady Pink, and Futura. And those are also 3 of my favorites. I like all of them, but it's just something about those 3. And so when the idea was brought to me, it was sort of like it was introduced to me as almost like a surprise. So you talk about getting choked up, and I'm just like, well, what is this? It was like a Zoom meeting or something like that. Yeah, like, are you in front of your computer monitor? And then, Makiba shot me this mock-up from design. Janet O'Donoghue and Karen Frascona, they sort of masterminded this whole thing. And when I saw it, I was just like, what is that? Is that real? What are you doing? I mean, they're like, oh, no, it's not there now, but it will be. And then, the conversations leading up to that. And, but my mind was completely blown.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. And we did a photo shoot. There was the Globe covered it. Mm-hmm. It was well documented. I didn't physically see the banners go up. It really brings home how, not just for me, but for any visual artist, how acknowledgement and respect for your craft and your years of sacrifice and your investment and your contributions. And if you're stubborn like me, trying to figure out how this way of life can become your livelihood, and never accepting no for an answer. And you wake up and you're this older person, and sometimes you've realized some of your objectives, and then other times you say, okay, I got this far and I got this much further to go, but it's not daunting, when you've made that decision and have that conviction to just ride it out. And then something like that happens that most artists don't normally see in their lifetime.
Right.
They can work to something like that, to something of that level of acknowledgement and respect, and still might not see it in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. Realize it. So I had to kind of collect myself to because it was very emotional.
Yeah, Kim, I was lucky enough to go down there, and I took pictures of the outside because, he's my friend from high school, and it was so exciting to see his work up there. But, what was even more powerful to me is that my daughter and my granddaughter also went to go see the exhibit. So it was like this 3-generation of really, reflecting and honoring all these hip hop artists from decades ago.
That's great. It's something that I didn't get a chance to see, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be other opportunities, but it was also a very proud moment, I think, for a lot of people to have the MFA really, open up their eyes a little bit to this other different culture that African Americans have, that it wasn't a slavery exhibit. It wasn't like a civil rights exhibit. This was like a happy hip hop exhibit. And, it was just, I was just so proud to kind of see something like that there at the MFA, because you usually don't see that kind of stuff there.
I didn't get any history about my culture at all when I lived in Romaine. And I remember one time, one of my teachers looked at me. I don't know what we were talking about, but she looked at me and she said, "Do you speak Swahili?" And I was so embarrassed because, like,
Wow.
these people didn't know anything about Black culture. They just thought, this teacher just thought that because I was a person of color, I don't know, I was in 6th grade, she thought I must know how to speak Swahili, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember vaguely learning about slavery. And I do think I had one of those books where it said, the slaves were, kept happy, they sang, and,
Yeah. I know what you mean.
But I distinctly remember when discussing when any topic of color or slaves came up, all eyes in the classroom went to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're talking about someone like Kim. It was hard. I mean, I was there during a time when I think Sanford and Son and Good Times.
Yep.
Were the only shows on, that showed Black people, and it was tough.
Yeah, and then later it was the Jeffersons, and my mother very specifically wouldn't let us watch those sitcoms. We were able to watch them as we got older, but I think for her it was important that she teach us what being Black meant, and that is those shows depicted one part of the experience, but not the entire experience. But yeah, it's and we have to continue to have these conversations, and we will throughout this season, about the importance of getting our stories out and our stories and protecting our stories.
And the fact that he does comic work is great too, and that he's out there because there's also all these issues about people of color playing what was once a white character, like in The Little Mermaid, Ariel, or in the Lord of the Rings. I can't remember what the show's called, but in one of those series that's airing right now, which I haven't seen, but I know that the dwarves, for example, are people of color, and that's offended a lot of people.
Yeah, it's crazy we're still having these conversations in 2023, but I just feel like, they're always going to be there. But, hopefully.
It's great that people like Rob Stull is there, showing his great work, exhibiting his great work for all to see.
In our final clip of the best of Rob Stull, we talked about the powerful legacy of Rob's father, Donald Stull, one of the most influential architects in this country and founder of the first ever African-American architectural firm, Stull Associates, which then later became Stull Lee Incorporated with his partner, David Lee. It is clear that his father has left an indelible mark on Rob's life, work, and passion for art. And your father was one of the most influential architects in this country and founded the first ever African-American architectural firm, Stull Associates, and then later Stull Lee Incorporated with, of course, David Lee. Did that significance weigh on you growing up? Talk about what you remember with the Stull Lee and your dad and these amazing landmarks that he was creating all around the Boston area.
Yeah. What an amazing guy. I mean, I'm still in awe of his legacy and everything that he represents. And I miss him dearly. It's kind of strange. I have such vivid memories of him, and I'm a product of divorce, like a lot of kids who were growing up. But he was always accessible, and in those early days, he always allowed me to be close to him. Like he always, the way I perceived it as a child, he always wanted me close to him. So it was never a big deal for me to be under his desk while he's having a meeting in his office. As a very young child, And, I'm under there with my markers and my crayons and my pencils and my sketch pads and my coloring books. And I'm just hanging out, having a good old time. I'm completely oblivious to the business that was going on. I was just happy that I was near my father. And I think sort of that, I'm positive that just being in his presence, and being so young, a lot of that just planted seeds in me later in life. And I was always around. There was always activity in the early days of him and forming his business. There was always excitement, and there was always all this energy that was constantly going on. And I joke that I was sort of like the office mascot back then, because he purchased a brownstone on Marlborough Street in the late 60s. And it was 4th-floor brownstone, which would go easily for $1 bazillion present day.
Yeah.
We bought it back then for something like 15 grand and made it his own. Like a lot of his sensibilities, his design sense, and the way he sees things, visualizes things. A lot of that was in the interior of the house, and there are areas of that home that he built by hand. And that's the environment I grew up in. How lucky am I? Where all of that kind of brushed off on me. And I have 2 sisters, and I'm sure it affected them in ways, maybe some similar, clearly some different. My younger sister doesn't have much of a memory of those early times. But they really affected me. And I wasn't really conscious of the significance and importance and magnitude of some of the things that he was doing, being a trailblazer. He was just my father. So all of that came later. And I think I went through a period when I was a teenager and trying to find myself creatively and as an artist, where I didn't like bringing attention to of who my father was. I'm trying to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
That was sort of like a crutch for me, because how do you possibly measure up to, a man like that? Mm. And it was a hurdle for a number of years, but I acknowledge it every chance I get now. I'm like, wow, this is where I come from. This is the environment that I grew up in. And it wasn't just my father, his brother. And I feel like they're all kind of hanging out, in the afterlife, looking down and watching over us all. But they're all together. By they, I mean, I'm referencing my uncles. His brother is my namesake. I was named after him, Robert J. Stull. I'm Robert B. Stull. And Robert J. Stull, but he was a world-renowned ceramist. He taught art at Ohio State University.
Yeah.
And the love for African art and educating me on Benin bronzes and Sinufu, and Gary, just all the different, tribal carvings and the art that was always in the house. Just all of that. That was my environment as a kid. And my uncle on my mother's side, Mahler Reiter, was a drawing instructor at ISD. And they were resources for me. And they were easy on me. When I had the balls to step to them and say, I want to be an artist. I want to be like you guys. How could I not want to be like them? That was the example I had growing up. So, we may have talked about this before, where, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be when you grow up? And, some kids might want to be like a movie star or a basketball player or play football, or I aspired to be like the people whose work was hanging on my folks' wall. Either family members or friends of the family, like Paul Goodnight, or Napoleon Jones Henderson, or Nelson Stevens, or Dana Chandler, or Renee Neblett, Barbara Ward, and the list go on and on. What connects all of that is that these were community artists. These were people, amazing creative forces that I had access to through my father and my mother. And you know, how could I not go down this road and become who I've become? And who I've become, in my opinion, is just an extension of all of that.
How does it feel just driving around Boston and these landmarks that you know your dad is responsible for? I mean, how does that make you feel? Because they're going to be there for like years and years and years.
Hopefully. They did quick work at the Harriet Tubman House, but that's another conversation. But it feels awesome, you know. And I was at the groundbreaking for Harriet Tubman, and I was so young. I have little flashes, but and that was the thing that was the most cool about him, Tony, is he always had me around. Like if he was going to look at a site, break ground on a new assignment or project, I was always there, you know? And so often you hear stories about how, you know, a mother or a father shut their kid out from, I mean, you know, that's business, you know, that's, you know, in some aspects you can kind of understand why that environment might not be the greatest for a young child. But, you know, my father, it seemed like he always wanted to have me near him. So, and of course I was completely unconscious of it. There were so many times where I would just like fly in my ear. There's a million other places I'd rather be. It's just nothing but dirt and rocks. What is this? And looking back, man, I thank God for them. Because they really helped form and shape my character and had such a significant, but played such a significant role in my life at that time when I didn't understand any of it. And that's the time when you think about it. It's like the father that was a basketball star putting basketball in his little baby son's hands or baby girl's hands, and hoping that child makes that connection by holding that ball,
right?
And something will rub off on him. You know, it was kind of, and I'm sure he wasn't even conscious of what he was doing. He was just, hey, I'm just hanging out with my son, and everybody acknowledged me. That's Mr. Stull's kid, you know, and that was normal life. For all I knew, every other kid in the neighborhood grew up that way. That was just all I knew. And that's what I wanted to do. I aspired to someday have my art hanging on somebody's wall, like the art in my parents' house.
Your dad has been described as having a philosophical approach to designing. And I have a quote from him. He says, "I think a bit philosophically in the way I think about design. If one is going to design an educational facility, it's my view that you first need to ask and answer questions regarding what is education, what is learning." Do you share any of his philosophies when it comes to how you approach your creative work?
Absolutely. Absolutely, no question. And I know I get that directly. I'm always looking for connections and drawing parallels and identifying how things work and come together. And my father armed himself. He loved to read. He was constantly reading. He could go through like a 500-page novel in a few days. He had the Holy Bible, the Quran, and a book on Buddhism all on the same shelf. So he wanted to know if he didn't follow a particular faith, he still wanted to know and understand it. And it brought about this sense of this inquisitive nature within him that I completely share, where just being curious about everything. And if you want to have an opinion about something, you have to educate yourself first. And it's just, I mean, he was so knowledgeable about so many different things. And those are the little things that we have the ability and the power to inject in our own lives.
I had never heard of Donald Stull. That I had never even known that there was an African American presence in architecture.
Yeah, and it's so funny because a lot of his work is just so prominent, particularly in the Boston area. The Boston Police Headquarters, the Ruggles Tea Station, and so much more. I mean, these are things that people drive by or walk to or through every single day. And it was very touching the way Rob would talk about his dad. And I knew that his passing was a huge loss to Rob. But it was also just a great time to really hear about him and his father. I mean, we can read the articles and there's, historical data and great features about Donald Stull and all of his contributions, particularly here in the Boston area. But to hear the son talk about his dad in that very sweet way, it was just very, very touching for me.
Well, you know what? I loved how his dad took him to work with him.
Yeah.
What an amazing experience. I mean, that right there just helped Rob it put him in there, and it gave him that motivation and drive to be what he is today.
And appreciation of art, which is really what was the mark that his dad left on him. I think about that famous photo of then President John Kennedy with John underneath the desk, and I can see the same type of picture with Donald Stull and having Rob like right near him, just really taking it all in. And what an incredible gift that must have been for him.
Yeah. Do they by any chance still have the Bring Your Daughter to Work Day? I
know, right? I don't know. I think it changed into something more politically inclusive, like bring your offspring to work day. I don't know.
Well, but I think that's a great idea. I mean, to follow, it doesn't matter, female or male. Show your child what work is about. Show them. Just give them the sense of that you can enjoy what you do.
Yeah. I mean, my mom, who you remember my mom, Cynthia, she brought me to work when I was in high school, and I fell in love with production as a result of it. The same hasn't happened with my kids. They have chosen their own paths, but exposing young people to all these, and they don't have to be your kids, do a challenge.
That's true.
Take someone else's child to work and let them, be exposed to different professions. I think that's a great idea.
I think it gives a child or a person, it lets them know that they don't have to work in a career that they don't like. I mean, they can push. They can, be motivated to be somewhere doing something they enjoy. It's most of your life, after all, that you have to be at work.
Exactly. Well, Kim, one down and the rest of the season to go. Any final thoughts?
This was fun. I loved it.
Well, I'm excited about all the things that we're going to do this season.
Me too. I really am. And I love meeting people and talking to people and just talking, discussing new ideas, thoughts.
We appreciate you joining us on board, and thank you for joining us for our season 4 premiere on the PowerPLAY Show. Stay tuned each month for a new episode with me and Kim. Until next time, I'm Tonya McGrath.
And I'm Kimberly Perez.
You can listen to past episodes of the PowerPLAY Show wherever you subscribe to podcasts, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Pandora Podcasts. You can also watch the PowerPLAY Show on our YouTube channel. Simply search the Hull Bay Productions media channel and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also tune in Saturdays at 5 p.m. on BroncoIRadio.com. Want more of the PowerPLAY Show? Visit thepowerplayshow.com.